Hello, Steve White, Steve Arts 89. Well, I have started my Doctor Who marathon, and by that I just have been trying to sample a little bit of each of the original Doctors because I don't have all the seasons, they're not even all available, they don't even all exist anymore. So I've been trying to work out how to manage that for years, and I've just given up, and I'm just going to watch the stories that I have. This is an odd collection of stories that have been released on DVD or that are on YouTube or available in other places. And I'm just going to be watching a few adventures from each of the original Doctors, and then I'm going to go and watch the whole of the modern era, because except for Flux, which I did watch, I have everything on DVD. I just got season 1 and 2 of Judy Gatwa's seasons. So I'm just going to sit and have a big marathon, and aside from a couple of Jodie Whittaker specials and Flux, I'm going to be watching them all the way through. So it's more of a modern era catch up than original, because I sort of did see the original ones back in the day. I sort of was aware of them at the time, but what was interesting out of all of it though was I discovered this little film called Adventures in Time and Space, which was about the creation of Doctor Who and filming the first iteration of Doctor Who, the first Doctor basically. It's the story of the first Doctor, and I found that interesting because I didn't like the first Doctor. I thought he was nasty and grumpy. I'm like, who wanted an old guy to be on this adventure? Like, who wants to go on an adventure with some grumpy old man? It never made any sense to me, and I sort of appreciated that later Doctor Who's were younger and funkier and cuter and cooler and nerdier, rather than just some sort of. I guess they were going for a authority figure. I think that's what they were going for with Hartnell, and he certainly played the sort of characters on TV. If you believe the movie, and I'm assuming since it was done by the BBC that it's sort of the accepted sort of history of this actor and his character and his experience with the series. But it's not an actual documentary. It is actually a film, a dramatisation of the creation of the show. But just to see how it came about, that there was just a gap in the schedule, and someone from ITV who was working at BBC, I guess, to try and help them be more hip, wanted to do a show for the kiddies, but he wanted to take it seriously, and he wanted it to not be about robots and bug-eyed monsters. He wanted it to be real science fiction. He was fairly ahead of his time in that he grabbed a female producer, an assistant he thought would be a good producer, and made her producer. And he had an Indian director, and that was the only one they had at the BBC. And he chose a producer because he thought that she would fight for her show, and he wanted someone that would challenge him, and she did. And she fought for the show, and they won, and it was a huge hit. It started off, they had like 10 million views for like the first episode, or it might have been the repeat of the first episode, because the first episode, the news on the same night was basically that JFK had been killed. So that killed them in the ratings. But and they're basically cancelled. They were told, look, just finish the 4 episodes you've been filming, and that's it. That's all you get. And he thought it was all over and done. But she argued for a rescreening of the first episode before the second episode, and the Daleks basically really, I don't know, everyone loved them, and that was like the beginning, and then it was like a hit and everyone loved them, and they couldn't do any wrong for a little while. And there's some nice scenes with Hartnell where he's out in the public and people are asking him for his autograph, and he sees little kids and they see him as the Doctor, and he's basically running around playing with them, and they're like following him around, and he's like, there's a Dalek, exterminate, and they'll run off screaming because they're just so innocent, and I really envied being around in those times, because I was sort of just after that era, and there still was that sense of imagination and wonder in fantasy and sci-fi and kids TV, but it soon became this pandering, talking down to kiddie crap that you can't watch as an adult, and I wouldn't really want to watch it as a kid either, because you don't want to feel like you're being talked down to when you're a kid. You want to feel like you're reaching for adult concepts in a serious show, and watching something maybe you shouldn't, something that scares you or is more adult than you. And that's how kids should be feeling when they're watching a show like that, not feeling like it's made for them and pandering. Like things like Space Babies, I don't know how that happened. Apparently Russell T Davies' idea of Doctor Who is very kiddie and not just family friendly, but really kiddie. And that's really not what they want and not what Doctor Who should be. So that's kind of the reason they're trying to get rid of him, I think, and hopefully that works. If that's the case, and he's been keeping it sort of on that trajectory. But yeah, the story was just sort of interesting, just how Hartnell didn't really want to do it. He was insecure about it, and it's a bit sad though, because you see that the way that they got him in and to stay was the producer really formed a bond with him and said that she'd be there with him and help him through it all, and that really helped him. And then she left. She left him on the show, and the director left as well. And then he was left on the show, if this is accurate, and he was the only one who knew how anything ran. The director didn't know how to do anything. Like, he didn't know how the TARDIS worked. Like, he actually had to get down into the console to switch the I guess like the core of the time machine on, because while they were traveling through time, it should have been moving up and down, and they didn't even know that it should be, or that's how you did it. And it just looked like he was abandoned. He was pulling all the weight himself, and he felt that he was, but he felt like he couldn't let down his producer and the director and the kids, and eventually he just left the show because it was just too much, and he didn't have the support that he needed, and that's kind of sad. And that's where I left the film. I haven't actually finished it. But I just wanted to talk about Doctor Who in general, and just my sort of experience of the early Doctor Who, like my first sort of episodes, and that I've only seen a few stories from each of the Doctors, each of the first 4 Doctors, and then I'm starting up again with some Tom Baker. So I sort of watched some episodes from the first 4, and now I'm watching episodes from the second 4 and overlapping with the Tom Baker years. But I wanted to start with Adventures in Time and Space because I didn't realise it existed. I thought it was a special, an actual Doctor Who special. I didn't realise it was a film about the making, and I just was confused by the date, and I put it in the wrong place, in the wrong order to watch, and then I realised, oh, it's a biography about, a documentary style film about the making of the first season. And I'm like, oh, I should have watched that first, but I'm glad I didn't, because it was fun to see, after having seen the first few stories from the first season, and then see how they came about. And when you're watching it, like, oh yeah, I remember that, I know how that worked, I know how that went with that, and it's just interesting to see, oh, that's how they did that, that's why they did that, oh. And I'm so glad, because it would have meant nothing to me if I'd watched that first before watching the actual episodes that they're talking about, which is how it was designed. Obviously, it's for people who are familiar with Doctor Who, to see how it was all created. But it was interesting, and I'm glad they went with sort of younger, funkier Doctors later. I never really got the grumpy old Doctor, and when Capaldi came in, I was like, ugh. I was sort of going to go back to Doctor Who, and I saw Capaldi, I'm like, no. And the guy from Game of Thrones, he's just so goofy. I'm a little bit concerned that the later Doctor Who is going to get too kiddie and too goofy, and I'm going to have trouble taking it seriously, because I'm just sort of sorting out the order of some specials and some things. I sort of saw just a little bit of some of the episodes, and I'm like, oh, really? I'm a little bit worried. And then also the guy from Little Britain's in it,